Okay, so when we think about the list of 9/11 victims, we think of one single horrific day, right? But what if I told you the final name on that list belongs to someone who actually disappeared the day before?
Yeah, you heard that right. The official list of those lost on 9/11 has 2,750 names. This this is the story of the 2,751st, and her name is completely different from all the others because she vanished the day before the towers ever fell.
So, to even begin to unravel this thing, we've got to start with the woman at the center of it all, a dedicated doctor whose life, well, it was way more complicated than it looked on the surface. Her name was Dr. Sneha Anne Philip. So who was she? Well, Sneha was 31 years old, a physician, and she lived with her husband Ron, also a doctor, in an apartment that literally overlooked the World Trade Center. And by all accounts, she was a woman of contradictions. On one hand, she was brilliant, totally dedicated to her work. But on the other, friends and family would later say she was really struggling that summer of 2001, both personally and professionally. Okay, this whole mystery, it all comes down to her final hours. So let's just walk through what we know for sure, the facts from the day she was last seen, which was Monday, September 10th. All right, so the day starts with a court appearance. Then, in the afternoon, she goes shopping at the old Century 21 department store. You know the one, it was just blocks from the Twin Towers. And then at 5:17 p.m., a security camera catches her leaving the store. And that's it. That is the last definitive, undisputed time anyone ever saw Sneha Philip. She just never came home that night. So imagine this. The next morning, as the world is just descending into absolute chaos, her husband Ron starts his own personal, frantic search. But here's the really chilling part. When investigators could finally get into their apartment, it was coated in this thick layer of dust and debris from the towers, and there were no footprints. Nothing was disturbed. Absolutely no sign that she had been there at all that morning. Her disappearance on the 10th just slammed right into the historic tragedy of the 11th, and that's what created this mystery that we're still talking about today. So, in the aftermath, you get these two totally different stories about Sneha that start to take shape. I mean, polar opposites. One paints her as a hero, and the other as a runaway. Two completely different versions of her final hours. And this is really where you see the core of the conflict, right? For the NYPD, all the evidence pointed to a woman in crisis who just vanished on September 10th. But for her family, no way. For them, the evidence pointed to a doctor, someone whose first instinct would have been to run towards the disaster on September 11th, not away from it. When the police started digging, they found a life that seemed to be quietly unraveling. Turns out, Sneha had been fired from her medical residency because of tardiness and alleged issues with alcohol. She was even facing a criminal charge. So you can see why, for investigators, this didn't look like a 9/11 hero. It looked like someone who either met a tragic end on the 10th or, and this is the other possibility they considered, used the absolute chaos of the 11th as the perfect cover to just disappear. But her family, they saw a completely different picture. They argued that her identity as a doctor was everything. I mean, think about it. She lived so close. She would have seen the attack from her window, and her training, her instinct would have kicked in. She would have felt compelled to help. They even managed to find a witness who thought they saw her near the towers that morning. So for them, the theory was simple, and it was heroic. She died a hero trying to save lives. So this thing, it stopped being just a missing persons investigation. It turned into a real battle over someone's entire legacy. And that fight moved off the streets of New York and right into the courtrooms. For years, the official stories sided with the police. You see, the courts needed hard proof that she was actually at the World Trade Center, and without that proof, she couldn't be listed as a victim. So in 2004, a judge officially removed her name from the list. I mean, what a devastating blow for her family. But they just refused to accept that. They were not letting her story end there, and they vowed to appeal. And this, right here, this is the turning point. In 2008, an appellate court did something pretty stunning. They reversed the decision. The ruling basically said, look, we can't be 100% certain, but there is a higher probability that she died at the World Trade Center than from anything else. I mean, given the insane circumstances of that day, how close she lived and what she did for a living, it was just the most logical explanation, especially since there was zero evidence of anything else. And just like that, after a long, painful fight, Dr. Sneha Anne Philip was officially declared the 2,751st victim of the September 11th attacks. For her family, it was a legal victory, for sure. They had finally secured the legacy they always believed was true. But here's the thing. The legal battle might have been over, but the actual mystery? It was still completely unsolved. You have to remember, the court's ruling was a judgment call based on probability. It wasn't based on finding any new definitive proof. And that's pretty much where her story rests today. Her name is right there, etched in bronze at the 9/11 memorial alongside thousands of others. But she still exists in this kind of gray area, this lingering ambiguity. The absolute 100% truth of her final hours, well, it's just unknowable. It's lost somewhere in that gap between the evening of September 10th and the morning of September 11th. So that leaves us with this fundamental question, doesn't it? We have an official legal conclusion, but we don't have a factual one. Was she a victim of a personal crisis that started and ended on September 10th? Or was she a hero, swallowed up by a national tragedy on September 11th? Her final chapter was just erased by history. And it forces us, all these years later, to try and decide for ourselves what we believe really happened in the final moments of Dr. Sneha Philip.